information is power.
Yeah.
And some folks love to hold on to information.
Yeah. Or overshare information as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm not a holder on to information.
Yeah.
I like everybody to know because I want to hear their thoughts.
You know, and I think there's also a charisma that comes through a vulnerability in that of like, sometimes I think that it's easy to become very fearful. Like, well, what are people going to think if they know? And I think, well, it's always going to be better what they think if I told them and now they know than if they heard from someone else and now they know.
Hey guys, welcome to the Troy Gramling Podcast. It is a wonderful, wonderful day, and it's great that you have decided to stop by. And you know, our mission from the very first podcast, you go all the way back to season 1, is simply to partner with you to reach your potential. That's the reason we're here today. It's the reason we show up every single week, sometimes with guests, sometimes just with a book review, lots of different ways in which to progress towards who God's created us to be, because I believe with all of my heart that you were knit together on purpose to do something of significance. And together, in a sense of community, we can do that. So be sure and leave a comment. You hear something that inspires you or encourages you, I'm sure it would inspire someone else as well. So pass it on and share it with somebody. And don't forget, if you haven't, we are coming up on a 1-year anniversary of my first book, and the Uncontainable Power of God Within You. What is that? It is potential. How do you experience that in your own life? We kind of go on that journey, and would love for you, if you haven't picked up a copy, you can do that, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, or Amazon as well. And today I have with me someone who shows up occasionally.
Oh, here we go.
It is my middle son, Mr. Carson Luke. Welcome to the show today.
I appreciate that. Kind of.
Yes.
A little bit. But I always show up, just to add clarity. Always show up. Just not always on podcast.
Oh.
But I'm always, most of the time.
Well, you're learning to be a father.
That's true. That's true.
4 months in.
Yep. Silas got his shots yesterday. And so he feels still like the same day. Quite an evening.
Was he grumpy?
Just kind of like whiny.
Did you have to hold him down?
No, he actually kind of handles those like a champ. Like he barely cried.
He's not like his dad then.
No. I do better with shots now, thank goodness. But I was something else as a child.
I remember we moved to Little Rock, and we had to get, I can't remember, we had to get some kind of shots. And you were
probably
crazy.
Just for school.
Yeah, it was for school, but I don't know what it was. But you were crazy. Mm-hmm. It took everything I could to hold you down. Everything. Because you weren't
it's
old.
It's so funny. Having a kid now, like, that had to be embarrassing. I just think of Silas. I mean, not at 4 months, that's different. But like, I know I wasn't 4 months. I'm not going to throw the age out there because I'd be embarrassed. I think I was like 5.
I mean, you were old enough to go to school.
Right. Because when we moved to Little Rock, I would have been 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. So I was like big enough to
you were Lion's
where
age.
It's like
around Lion's age.
Let's settle down. Yeah.
But anyways, that's the past.
That it is. I've grown since.
You have grown. So we'll see how Silas Dean does.
Yeah.
For sure. Hey guys, today what we're going to talk about is, all the authors, the leadership authors love to come out with these little honor books is what I call them. I'm not sure who the publisher is. This one is by HarperCollins, John Maxwell, and he has taught on leadership. It says right here, he's the #1 New York Times bestseller.
Wow.
You know, I did make a bestseller list too.
It
wasn't the New York Times, but you got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
But anyways, John Maxwell is the the charismatic leader.
You were reading one of his other books down there in the bottom?
No, well, that's a subtitle. 21 skills to connect with people.
He's always got those 12
He likes numbers.
Yeah.
He likes numbers. Most of his books are written very similar, but I always enjoy them. They're simple to read.
Yeah.
And this one just recently came out, and I thought we might see if we agree or disagree.
I'm with it. Really quick, Honor Book. What is that? Why do you call it that?
Well, because I think that was the publisher that used to do books like this.
Like small.
books.
Okay. I was curious
Yeah.
what that meant.
Yeah, and sometimes these books are parts of other books. I don't know if this one is or not, because now they do a lot of smaller books like this.
Yeah.
But, it's derived from the material previously published as 25 Ways to Win with People.
Gotcha. Okay, so that makes sense.
So in other words, it's just another way to...
Hey, come on. That's America.
If you're negative, you can say it's just another way to make money.
Yeah.
But if you're positive, you could say it's another way to get the message out.
Now, I do wonder if people read that book, bought this, he's got a new book. It's like, I read this.
Yeah. Well, they might. But again, it's in different form, and sometimes you see it different, think about it different.
And I'm sure people wouldn't even remember. Open the book and not even realize.
Yeah.
They're reading
It depends on how much they read, right?
Mm-hmm.
He defines in here, where is it? Charisma. What is charisma?
The kids call it Riz
Is that what
these days. Mm-hmm.
What is charisma, and does every leader need it? Let's start with the second question first. Of course, leadership is influence. John Maxwell said that for decades. And then let's see, how does he define? Are some people born with natural charisma who have the innate ability to attract others? The answer is yes. There's no denying it. The people at Gallup who develop Strength Finder call it woo. I haven't done the Strength Finder thing. The ability to win over others. Woo, win over others.
Interesting.
That is interesting. If you possess the ability, that's great. But if you don't, here's the good news. Charisma is like leadership. Mr. Maxwell says it can be learned and developed, no matter how little of leadership talent you naturally possess. So what's the secret to charisma? You know what Mr. Maxwell says? It's actually very simple. Focusing on others. To be charismatic, you don't need to be physically attractive, tall, I'm both of those things, athletic, talented, or rich.
Are there any of those?
I think I'm
rich, I guess.
I should be a natural. I should be a lot more charismatic than I am. You just need to care about people. Oh, maybe that's my problem.
There you go.
Care about people and make them feel important. Anyone that does that can connect with people and become a shining light in a dreary world.
Do you feel like charisma is something that anyone can learn? Because I would say that there's definitely a part of charisma that you can improve on, you can get better on. But is it something that anyone can learn?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they want a certain level, I mean, we can't all be, whoever. Well, I mean, like Donald Trump's, they say he's gotten a certain amount of charisma. If you meet him in person, Barack Obama, and I guess probably all the presidents have to have a certain amount.
Right. I remember hearing that a lot about like Reagan. A lot of charisma.
And I'm sure Joe Biden did in the day. So I think there's certain personalities that, it's more challenging, more difficult. I mean, I think extroverts, it's easier. Because again, he says it's just about thinking about others, but then it's expressing that. It's not, I can think about others, but I have to express it.
Yeah.
And I can do it privately. I can write cards. I can do those kind of things.
Right.
But in a room, if you're going to walk into that room, even if you're going to ask questions of somebody, you have to have the extrovertness to be able to go
right.
and ask those questions and interact with people and not just stand in the corner.
Yeah.
So I think it's more difficult for some folks. And then some, I think even, he says it's not, certain physical attributes, but I think they can.
That helps.
A smile helps. If somebody's pleasant looking as opposed to not, you know what I mean? And some of that can be intentional, you know what I mean? Like a beard, the way you wear your hair, all those things, I think, have an impact on whether you feel approachable.
Yeah.
I know we have for those of you, I don't know where you're listening from, but a pastor here, executive pastor, Matt, and I remember he said that he used to kind of shave all his hair off and then he had a big beard. And it was, it was intimidating because he's a big guy. He's about 6'3" or so. So it was an intimidating look. So he intentionally, got rid of the big beard and grew out his hair. And I think it does make him probably more approachable.
I think so. Yeah.
So, so it's hard to be charismatic. There are people very intimidating that are still charismatic, but you have to get past that in order to experience that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things he mentions. We're not going to go over all 21, but to see what you think and how you might apply them. And maybe you've thought about them, maybe you've read the book, maybe you haven't, but it's always good to kind of give a self-evaluation of how well you're doing. I read a book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, very, very famous old book.
Dale Carnegie,
yes. And the one thing I remember in the book that I apply every time I write an email is he said that you want to start with the person that you're writing to. And most people don't. Like they'll send an email and they'll say, hey, I just wanted, start with what I'm, instead of, because it takes more intentionality to think, now how do I start with you?
Yeah.
And,
almost difficult.
Yeah. Well, you get, hi, Carson, I hope you're having a great day. And then well, right. You have to kind of work, but I just remember that in the book. And he said, which is talking about, cause same idea,
right?
Are you going to focus on others? So that's what he says. His number one in part 1 of 21 is put your focus on others. And if you think about how do you do that, that's one way in your writing. Do you talk about what you need from that person or want from that person, or do you talk about that person? What are some other ways that you can think of that you can apply that idea or that rule? What's he call them? 21 skills, that skill.
I don't know if it's going to pop up later, but for me, I think that when it comes to having other people kind of be the focus, I think listening, I think that, for me, a big telltale of a charismatic person is the ability to listen and then hear what's actually being said and then brought back, whether it's a question or whether it's adding on top of what was said. One of the things I always try and do is when I'm in a meeting, listen to what's being said so that I don't repeat what someone else said without saying, to build on what, Jeffrey said, I think blah, blah, blah. I think those little things can kind of just make you more favorable in people's eyes, the ability to truly listen to what they're saying, and it just feels good. Like as a person, when you're telling someone something and then they ask you questions about that after, you know what I mean? And so, you could even throw that being a question asker, I think lends itself to being charismatic. Being someone who's constantly asking questions, wants to learn about people and what they do and how they do it and all those things.
It's interesting because can you be charismatic and not, focus on others?
I think you'd probably be, yes, but you'd probably be not a fun person to be around because it would all revolve around you, right?
But if you're not fun to be around, you're not very charismatic.
I guess charismatic, it would depend on the definition of charismatic. Charismatic would be in the eye of, the person, right? It's not necessarily like a character trait as far as because sometimes I do think of charismatic just as purely extrovert, which you could be and not focus on people. You know what I'm saying?
There are charismatic leaders, celebrities, who then when you're around them, you realize that their focus is only on themselves, but on the screen or from a distance, they have charisma, as we think about it, is more than just focusing on others, or it is the ability through a medium to make people feel that they're being focused on.
Right.
Bill Clinton, again, another president that they often talked about, I feel your pain. Because there are a lot of folks who are, in other words, they attract a crowd, they could attract fans or an audience, but their focus is all on themselves.
Yeah.
So, that kind of charisma, that natural, again, it has a sense that it is that they're focused on you or thinking about you. And I think that's that's always the temptation, is to read through these things and use them as opposed to becoming them. Like you were saying, listening. Well, I would say, okay, if I truly want to be charismatic, then it's not just listening, but it's who am I listening to?
Yeah.
Because if I'm really focused on other people, then it's not just, I mean, I don't mean you listen to every dummy, but I'm just saying, do you only listen to those who can add value, or that that can add value to you or help you get something done, or that you respect, but are you willing to listen to whoever you've given time to?
Right.
Like, if you're going to ask somebody into your life or you're going to talk to them, will you really listen to them? There's to me, in a sense, an authentic charisma that goes deeper than just the outside.
Absolutely. That's where like you get into like circles. Like one of the things I'm not big on is like networking. I mean, it's important. I'm not trying to downplay it, but it can feel a lot of what you're talking about. Like it's a lot of charisma that doesn't always feel real. You know what I mean? It's like it's put on charisma for this moment to be the most attractive, not just physically, but the most attractive person in the room. But there is a difference when it's, the one-on-one conversation with someone who isn't the one you're trying to impress, still having that desire to listen, to hear, to make them important.
I think you have to think of networking as part, there's a lot of inauthenticness in networking, but I think it's like, if you want to get strong, you have to lift weights. You know what I'm saying? In the sense that to find the authentic person or the real person, if you don't do the networking, you'll never find them.
Right.
So you have to deal with the pain of maybe some folks being fake, or some folks just trying to network in order to get what they want.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of have to work through that, because it's almost impossible, to connect with people if you don't connect with people.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that's, again, that's what makes it more easier for some folks who just enjoy connecting, and more challenging for others. Here's the next one. So, right, you got to put your focus on others. I think if you're a believer, a Christ follower, one of the things you can do is to pray that God would help you to be curious of other people.
Yeah.
Because that helps a lot, right? If you're curious, then you're going to ask those folks questions, try to learn. You're going to put the focus on them because you want to discover more about them.
Right.
Where if you're not a curious person, you might be ready to move on. I mean, we've all talked to people that once they kind of find out, oh, you don't have the keys to the kingdom I'm trying to get into, and they move on.
That's the truth.
Or I've been to meetings, where somebody, I went with Joel to, a couple of places. One was Washington. They had a big Washington thing, and Nancy Pelosi was there, and all a bunch of Democrats and Republicans were there. And then I went with him to Fox. He was on Fox one time. And you know what I mean? Like, they would talk to you, but they were looking at him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right, so number 2, he says, believe the best in others. And that's a decision.
Mm-hmm. And a difficult one. And I would say a constant one. It's not a one-time decision, because you're going to be let down often. I would say it's a decision that you kind of have to continue to tell yourself to make,
I think a lot of times too, it's how much do you believe in yourself, especially if you're, the leader or to help that person become a 7, or an 8 or a 9 or a 10, even though they might be operating at a lower number, you don't, and if people are driven, we tend to want to reach what's expected of us.
Yeah.
So if you put a 3 on somebody, that's all that's expected of me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you say, you've got these gifts and these talents, right. I see you. And then we are all attracted to people who believe in us.
Yeah.
If somebody, and not only are we attracted, most people are not only attracted to somebody who believes in them, but they are inspired to give their best effort.
Yeah.
To not let that person down.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's a good one, and it takes practice because again, you don't want it to be fake. I think you can do this, and they can't.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody swimming across the river just because
Drowning because you told them they could. Yeah.
So you have to, and then here, these are all, I think, if we think about them, they're doable, right? We can focus on other people. We can believe the best in others, add value to people.
Yeah.
And I think you have to think through, depending on who the person is, what value they need, and then what value you have the capacity to add.
Yeah. And I think this is one you really want to be careful with. You want to encourage, you want to add value, right? Encouraging is a great way to add value to someone. But you do want to be careful that you're not adding value, as you just said, that's not real. And it's really easy to not take the time to think through what's real for this person and to just start, man, you're the best at this. And now someone else has to deal because now they've got this mindset that, he told me I was the best, and now it's someone else's problem that they've got to work through. So I think it's super important that when you're adding value, if it's through encouragement, that you're honest with that encouragement, that it is genuine and it is real. That it's not just throwing things out.
And because there's, the next one he's got is encourage others every time you see them. So you can do that. You just want that the encouragement you're giving is real.
Yeah.
You don't want to give. It's like every time somebody speaks, if you don't think they did a good job, once they no longer trust that your encouragement is real, it's no longer encouragement.
Yeah.
You can say it, but if they don't believe it, then it's not encouraging. It's the opposite. You know what I mean? In the sense, like, I don't know. They're not. They're always going to tell me the same thing.
Yeah.
He says, remember people's names. Tyler's good at that.
I'm terrible at it.
I think remembering names. Again, there's certain things that we're naturally good at and things we have to work upon, and depending on how we're wired. Like I'm not a detail person, but I'm very aware of details in appearance. So I notice if somebody has got a haircut, I notice if somebody's got new shoes on, I notice if somebody's wearing, I don't know, whatever different. So I'm more visual in that sense, and I don't think I'm as much auditory.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember what I hear as well as what I see.
Yeah.
So I might remember, that's the guy that was wearing those whatever shoes before I remember their name.
Yeah.
So I got to try to think about how can I see their name.
Yeah.
Once I see their name, I won't forget it.
And I think there's almost a learning in, if you are the leader, then people are going to feel more connected to you than you are to them, right? Like, because they're seeing you, whereas you're seeing a room that you're talking to. Not that you don't care about them, but you're seeing multiple people. And so I think that sometimes it can really almost kill all charisma when they realize you don't know who I am, And so it's always hard because there's times where it's almost best to just ask. Like, I'm not going to fake it. I'm right off the get-go. Remind me of your name again. But then there's times where you should know their name. You've had multiple conversations and it's like, okay, I can't ask anymore. I'm going to have to find this out through CCB or something like that.
Well, it's even worse when you get older because then you forget things that you actually know.
Yeah. Like you did know their name. Like, yeah. No, I
just
get
don't
you.
know their name in that minute.
I
You know
hear
what I mean?
I hear you. That's always. I don't have a good memory in general, not just with names, but just kind of across the board.
Well, you need to start taking supplements. It gets worse as you get older. All right. Learn what matters to people.
Yeah.
Pastor Danny helps us with the podcast. That's his. What was that book we read? The one where you find blue fishing. That was a really good book. It talked about how you find, what matters to people, and then you meet that need. The other one was with the guy from the circus.
The Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
I forget the name of the book, but it was a good book.
He talked a lot about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Finding what, as opposed to just, running to Walgreens on Valentine's Day and buying a heart-shaped candy and a flower. It's
Yeah, nothing like a spouse who will really show you if you actually are good at figuring out what matters to people. That's the truth.
And it takes time to, one, you have to listen, and then it takes time to think it through.
Yeah.
And that's, marriages, for those who are watching or listening and are married, it's easy. I think we screw that up more with people that we know than actually people that we don't. Because when you first meet somebody, you try to do all those things, and then you start taking the relationship for granted.
Yeah. It's my wife, it's her first full-on Mother's Day. And so it's okay, I got to go big with it. And so I told her hey, I got your gift the other day. She's like, don't get me something I'm not going to use. And so she believes for that to be the first thing she said, she believes that I would get her something that she would never use.
So she doesn't have a lot of confidence in your gift.
I guess not. But I've done better recently. She holds on to the past when I wasn't so good. But more recent, I've done better.
No, that'll be good. Get her, because just even as if you say that, think it's Mother's Day. So you think, well, what if you got your mother?
That's good.
That's what I'm saying. So as the spouse, you have to fill in the hole, because the reality is the kids are never going to get mother something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a short window.
Maybe when you're in college or...
Yeah, single, late, high school, maybe you have a job into early college. And then beyond that, it's then...
Right. Yeah, it's just interesting how Mother's Day really is the responsibility of the spouse.
Always. Always.
I mean, we always get mom a gift, but it tends to be, when I say mom, I'm talking about my mom and Stephanie's mom. We always will get them gifts, or make them something, or a picture or something.
Right.
But probably the greater gift for the parents is at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And Father's Day. Oh my gosh.
That's why I'm doing all this. I'm really hoping something big comes my way for Father's Day.
Let me just make
That's what I've heard. I've heard it's not quite the same.
Let me just make a plea out there for anybody that knows a father. You don't have to be your father, but if you know a father, get them something.
Yes.
Get them something for this Father's Day. And if you're listening to this or watching it after Father's Day, hey, it's never too late.
It's never too late to get a new set of golf clubs. Never.
Woo, you're thinking big for Father's Day.
I am.
I mean, usually it's a pair of socks.
No, I don't settle small.
No, okay.
Golf clubs.
I happen to be your father. Okay, just so you know that.
Yep. Just wait for those golf clubs to come in.
Yeah, you were thinking about yourself. You weren't thinking about me.
No, I was thinking about you.
Oh, okay.
Your golf swing needs some new clubs.
All right, so let's move on here. We got just a few moments later to get to. He says to become invested in people, share information with others. That's a good one, because information is power.
Yeah.
And some folks love to hold on to information.
Yeah. Or overshare information as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I'm not a holder on to information.
Yeah.
I like everybody to know, because I want to hear their thoughts.
And I think there's also a charisma that comes through a vulnerability in that of sometimes I think that it's easy to become very fearful. Well, what are people going to think if they know? And I think, it's always going to be better what they think if I told them and now they know, than if they heard from someone else and now they know, And so I think it's always there. I do believe it helps you. I mean, you got to use wisdom. I'm not saying everything is for everyone's ears, It can cause chaos if that were the case. But I do think that letting people in on what's going on in your heart and your mind and the business and whatever, I think it brings a lot of benefits with it.
Yeah. Well, I just think you always have to ask yourself too, am I hanging on to this so that I feel powerful? Because I know something you don't know. I know what time this event's starting. I know who's being let go or who's getting hired or the service, in our case, the service time change or whatever it is. And I think, again, that person never comes across as a charismatic kind of person. They always come across as a controlling person.
Yeah.
But it is power, right? I know something you don't know. And that has a sense of feeling powerful. And if you're, and everybody likes to feel powerful. Let me give you these last two real quick. One is, he says, becoming interesting to two people is, he says, become a good storyteller, which again takes practice. I mean, again, everything, some folks are natural but even if you're natural, in some ways that can be your great enemy because you only use your natural ability. You don't get better at it. Mm-hmm. But being able to help people understand or, enjoy, everybody likes a story.
Oh yeah.
And then the last one he says is number 21 is to help people win.
Yeah.
And that's a big one for me is if you want to succeed in life, help the people around you to win.
Yeah. That's what Jesus said.
Yeah. And it's doable, right? Mm-hmm. It's just, so think about it today. Who do you know? Who you doing life with? How do you help your spouse win? How do you help your coworker? How do you help your children? How do you help your parents? How do you help?
Get them a good Mother's Day gift.
But it is that if we just think about it, we can be more charismatic than we are.
Yeah.
But we tend to live life, I said this weekend, we tend to live life as if it's a movie and we're the stars. Mm-hmm. And it all goes around us. We're thinking about ourselves.
That's the truth.
But if we can just kind of walk through life thinking about how do I help the people around me to win? Mm-hmm. What are they trying to do? And if I've never listened or I'm not curious, I won't have any idea what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But if I really think about, what's the heart of my spouse and how do I help her? What's she worried about? How do I help him, accomplish that, or my supervisor or the congregation? And sometimes that takes time and you have to work through it and think, one is what they're running after a positive thing. You know what I mean? Like the person who's trying to purchase the drugs might really...
I'm going to help you win.
You're like, maybe that's, maybe you have charisma with them, but that might not be what you're going after. Anyway, it's a great book. It's an easy read. John Maxwell's books are always inspirational, and, there's always some insight to experience. So pick it up. Of course, it's not as good as Potential. The Uncontainable Power of God Within.
Not even close.
But, John, Dr. Maxwell, you keep working.
Maybe you'll get there.
That's right. Or you could promote my book and help me win.
Hey, there we go. If you really want to have charisma.
That's right. Hey, you could write about it in your next book. Come on.
The 21 something.
Dr. John C. Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
He has made a big impact in my life. First guy I've ever heard really talk about leadership. But I'm glad you're here today, and I hope that we said something that was an encouragement to you that, if nothing else, gave you the next step to take as you grow to become the leader that you were meant to be and accomplishing that of significance for which you were created. So share, pass it along, right? All it is a click of a button, and you might be the one that's used to inspire somebody else. If you haven't subscribed, that always helps the algorithm, and the algorithm gets this information in front of more people. And like I said, at the end of the day, our goal is to help people reach their potential. And the more people that reach their potential, the greater world we will all live in. And wouldn't that be wonderful? I'm glad you decided to be in our world for the last few moments. Check us out again. There are tons of old episodes if you haven't. Season 1. We're about midway into season 2, so you can check that out. We also do a live stream every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, or just almost, I think we've missed 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. We'll have to talk about Mother's Day, but
yes,
check that out, and all other kinds of resources as well. If you'd like to see the weekend teaching, some of those are on this channel, but you can also go to potentialchurch.com, and it's an exciting time to be alive. Lots of opportunity, and I'm glad to do life with you. We'll see you next Thursday. Check it out here on the Troy Gramling Podcast. God bless. Have a great day. Wait, before you go, if you're enjoying our content, check out this interview or this one here. They're both really good. And don't forget, subscribe. It's really important. We'll see you next time.